Teachers of Reddit, have you ever had a student try to seduce you? What happened? I teach high school kids. I'm young compared to most other teachers at my school. I get loads of cheeky comments, questions. The best one was, "Miss, I can't come to that detention you set me on Wednesday. I can do Friday though, my place." I was a graduate teaching assistant, and I was meeting with an undergraduate student about a poor test grade, which wasn't uncommon as the professor often let students improve test grades. She came in wearing a tracksuit, the kind you might wear to the gym, not so much anything else that required modesty. The top was unzipped, displaying her impressive breasts, which were clearly meant to be on display. She stated she was willing to do anything to improve her grade. For one brief, glorious moment, a multitude of scenarios ran through my mind. After that one brief, glorious moment, I walked her out of my office and into the professor's office without saying a word. I don't know if she was seriously offering what I thought she was or if she just expressed herself poorly and had just come from the gym. I was in my third year of law school, and I wasn't going to find out. This is my father's story, so probably couldn't happen now like it did in the 70s, but at my father's high school graduation, the entire class knew of one student that had a crush on a teacher. She had skipped a few grades and become a teacher early, so she was about 6 years older than him. At the graduation ceremony, the teachers were all lined up to shake each student's hand. This particular student went across shaking their hands, then planted a hand on each cheek and full mouth kissed the teacher on which he had a crush. It was considered a joke and everyone laughed as he received a light slap for the prank. Today the two are married with 3 children. I'm fairly young and teach middle schoolers, so the most that ever happens is me catching them looking at my butt when I'm writing on the board or trying to look down my shirt when I help them with a math problem. It's really awkward for me, but I know they're in an awkward stage, so I don't call them out. Usually after I catch them they look away quickly and don't do it again. A girl once took my phone and put it between her breasts. I didn't know how to respond, I was merely an intern. Same girl put cute as evaluation of my teaching. Awkward. A friend had it worse, a girl went completely crazy over him. She started crying and crap, explicitly told him she wanted to have the devil's tango with him. He tried to calm her down and talk her to stop crying. Didn't work. He had to get the principal involved in the end. Both girls were 15. Student taught in middle school band, and after a few months one of the clarinet players broke out of a pack of giggling girls to ask me if I had a girlfriend, and what my favorite thing to do on a date was. She was so visibly nervous I felt bad for her, gave me some flashbacks of my incredible awkwardness at that age. I teach elementary school, so I've never had a student seriously try to seduce me, but I'm a woman in my early 20s and sometimes a boy in my class will have a crush on me, and it will be hilariously obvious. A 5th grader once wanted to ask me if I had a boyfriend, but he had his friend do it instead because he was too embarrassed. Kind of. It seems like seduction implies some kind of skill, so I wouldn't go that far. But I taught 12th grade English. I had one student who seemed to just really like me. He would do things like show up before class with a coffee for me. Whenever he would make a naughty joke to another student, he would glance at me and say, "Right, MST." Then he started writing really explicit things in his class journal about an older woman he wanted to do things to. I never commented. When he asked if I read it, I would say, "Yep," and that was that. It kind of came to a head when he was about to turn 18 and invited me to his birthday party. It was supposedly at a local strip club, and he didn't know I knew that when he told me the name of the place. He kept saying, "Come on, Ms. T, you're the only one I really want to be there with." He kept going on and on about it, so I finally said he needed to stay with me after class. Retrospectively, I hope he didn't get the wrong idea. So he stayed after class and I said, "Brian, you're a great student and you are fun and smart. But I am your teacher and I could get my ass fired if any weird rumors popped up about me being inappropriate with the student. Don't get me fired, okay?" He took it seriously through the whole year until prom, when he came to class in a tux and with a flower for me and asked me to be his date. I laughed it off and said, "Well, I have to chaperone, so I will be there anyway." I didn't chaperone, but he seemed satisfied with my answer. Last day of school he asked for a hug and I gave him one. Then I said something like, "There are lots of TAS in college," and sent him on his way. Had a student leave her phone hash on the final exam of a senior level finance course. We went out a few times. She was cool, we are still friends, and BD. That was the only one I acted upon. Other than that, I get about 1 or 2 lady students per semester I teach ask me out or try to seduce. Nowadays I assign seats and put those types in the back of the class. I teach middle school, so I have had a few boys with crushes. One boy would use his lunch money and buy me a cup of coffee and bring it to me. Had to call home and it was a funny, awkward parent conversation. Another boy would always tell his teachers he had lessons. I'm a music teacher, and come down to see if I needed help. Again, had to send him back and talk to his parents. The most awkward and uncomfortable one was this boy viola player, Steven. He would compliment me and always say borderline inappropriate things. I talked to guidance, but I was one of the few teachers that could get him to do anything, so they would ask me to try and mentor him. I called home, but no parents around, just grandparents who spoke Spanish. Then he started trying to put his arm around me and be uncomfortably close to me. I had to go to the guidance counselor again and get them involved because it was bad. He couldn't switch classes because I'm the only orchestra teacher, and he was actually quite a good player. One day he comes to lessons and says, "Well, I'm a man now, Mrs. IRMSL 919. Come sit next to me and let me show you." Well, I had to ask him to leave, again guidance meetings, because I could never get in touch with any parents. Turned out he went to a party and got a blowjob by 2 girls at the same time and was bragging about it. Finally, had a meeting with parents, principal and a translator. He was suspended for the rest of the year since I was not the only person he was inappropriate with. Mind you, the kid is in 8th grade, so like 13. My first year, I was 23, I taught seniors. I always heard talks about how every girl at the high school had a crush on me, especially my actual students. Well, all year long I hear about how so-and-so has a crush on you and was always worried about being approached by one of my students once they started to turn 18. And coincidentally, not being sarcastic, I became single around this time as well. Well, all year long nothing really occurred other than subtle flirting until prom season started to rear its head around the corner. During class, one of the more popular, attractive girls raised her hand and asked me randomly, "What kind of car do you drive?" And I respond, "Why do you want to know?" I usually respond to dumb, irrelevant questions during note-taking because sometimes it may lead to a good example. I talk oft, Ekin. And she responds with, "Oh, I just wanted to know what kind of car I was going to get picked up for prom in." And I kind of react as if a huge tsunami wave was coming toward me and I'm trying to formulate my plan of attack. Just stand there and take the hit. Try to run away. Try to dive under and hope I can hold my breath long enough, etc. So after a few seconds of students' laughter I respond, "I'm pretty sure I'm not allowed to take a student to prom." And she responds with, "Well, I'm legal so it shouldn't be a problem." And that's when the crap really hit the fan. Every single guy in that class had a crush on her and they start to laugh and holler, "Do it up. That's what's up." And so forth. I finally tell her once the class settles down, "No, it's not appropriate. But if you really want to go with someone that works here, ask the principal instead. He'll hook it up with free entrance and pick you up in his stretch yellow limo." The class busts out laughing and I quickly go back to the lesson. Honestly, that was probably the roughest 5 to 6 minutes of my life. I teach 6th grade now, so glad that isn't an issue now. I had a female student, she was constantly failing and at the end of the 6 weeks, would become flirty. Her biggest thing would be to ask if there was any way she could pass the 6 weeks and then press her breasts against my arm. I would ask her to get off of me and she would comply. Nothing came of it. She was a vile, disgusting young woman who I was continually repulsed by. I documented the incidents, reported them to my AP and principal, and asked that she be removed from my class, but nothing was ever done. The school I worked at was low performing and attendance was a huge issue, so they weren't about to suspend her. I was a substitute teacher a few years back. One night I went to a party with some friends and ended up making out with a really cute blonde. A few days later I was subbing for a high school class and who should walk in but said blonde. She had neglected to say that she was still in high school and certainly didn't look it, so this caught me by surprise. I was hoping nothing would be said, but as soon as the bell rang her friend who she had been whispering to exclaimed, "You made out with the teacher." So much for subtlety. To make it worse, she was smiling and sending me texts throughout the entire class period saying, "You look really cute. When are we getting together again?" I never saw her again and nothing came of it, but it was about the most uncomfortable hour of my life. I had a student buy me a light-up rose and an enormous fake diamond ring for Valentine's Day. He told me I could maybe just wear it or whatever. They're pretty young, so it's innocent. Parents, on the other hand, are not so innocent. I've had a few that have made some inappropriate phone calls and remarks. One even grabbed my ass. I had to have coworkers sit in during parent conferences just to be safe. I've been teaching for nearly 20 years. The most seductive thing a student ever did was put her phone number on a quiz. I teach 11th and 12th grade. When I first started teaching, I was 22, so my students were only 4-6 years younger than me. I had one girl, a senior, stop me in the hallway and say, "Mister, I want you, and I will have you." I just sort of laughed and walked away. Another time, the same girl was being very loud at play auditions, so I poked my head through the curtain and said, "Hey, why are you being so loud?" Her response, "Why are you so physically attractive?" The other teachers helping out with the play were female and couldn't stop laughing. I was kind of irked, because that seemed like a double standard. Both times it occurred, I reported it to my principal right away. Another female student would routinely unbutton the top of her blouse and come to my desk and lean over to talk to me. She's a stripper now, actually invited me to come see her strip. Again, reported to principal right away. My funniest one, though, was this 19-year-old Russian exchange student. I walked into my classroom and she was sitting at my desk, in my chair, with my pointer. I asked her what she was doing, and, right in front of the class she replied, with this coy smile, "I'm playing with your stick." The class thought it was hilarious, and in hindsight, it was. But goddamn, it was awkward. Still, I've noticed that the female students never receive any consequences for this crap, which is odd. Yes, finally the chance to tell this. I'm a female high school teacher, and once during my second year of teaching, I was 24, one of my male students came in before school. "Can I talk to you?" he asked. He seemed nervous. "Sure," I said. He pulled a chair up in front of my desk and sat down. "I'm in love," he said. He then grabbed my hand and started to stroke my palm with his index finger. I yanked my hand back and may have screamed "ack." At the same time, "I'm much older than you," I said. "It doesn't matter. I have a boyfriend. It doesn't matter. Leave and go with me." No. I finally got him to leave my room, and then immediately ran down the hall to tell the school social worker, my department chair, and every teacher friend I had just so I couldn't get nailed on it later. It was not the most serious seduction attempt ever, but it took me by complete surprise and was probably the most awkward conversation of my life, and, as a teacher, I have a lot of awkward conversations. My observations as a male HS teacher, you won't be propositioned as much as the female teachers, but it will still happen, though the majority of the crushes will be silent. You will also almost certainly be under the scrutiny of a lawyer at least once in your career, but good news, it'll probably be about a SPED student's accommodations. My personal experience, I had one student ask, in the middle of class, what I would do if someone started a rumor that I had gotten a student pregnant. I told her the question was inappropriate, and felt pretty uncomfortable the rest of the class. I got someone to cover my next period, and talked to a principal and a counselor. The principal was mainly worried about documenting interactions with the kid in case of a lawsuit. The school counselor simply pulled the kid out of my class, and lawyers never got involved. I don't know if that was harassment or not, but holy crap did that kid make me uncomfortable. Like, on a serious, do I really want to continue this career level? I've only twice been called into the office to file a statement, once because another teacher was suspected of having an affair with one of my students, and once because I got knocked on my ass while breaking up a fight and they wanted to know if wanted to press charges. I didn't. First off, this happened when I was a grad student. I am a woman with a disability and I use a wheelchair all the time. I was teaching community service learning and the project was to raise money to support a school for kids with disabilities in Uganda. This young man who had a learning disability signed up to take my class. I think I was the first empowered woman with a disability he ever met. He fell in love with me. It was really awkward. He sent flowers to my office, which the whole department saw. At one point he kissed my forehead, which I was not expecting or in agreement with. Finally he started following me everywhere I went. I had to report him to disability services and the school, and then he said we were having an affair. Not to my knowledge, but because I thought I could handle this situation and hadn't reported it right away to the school, they believed him. Eventually they said I could either leave school without them recording this incident, or, if I fought it, they would have to make permanent note in my record. I was unhappy in my grad program anyway, so I decided to leave because people were actually crazy enough to believe him, even though someone was usually around when he was around or other students were. I decided not to risk it, although I'm sort of mad at myself that I didn't fight back. Lesson learned: when I start my MFA, which is really what I want to be doing, I will keep track and report any student crushes from the first day I notice them. I had a troublemaking student last year who was a constant threat of annoyance. One of the things I do when I'm trying to refocus a student when they're acting a fool is to stare at them and give them a WTF kind of look. Usually works. Well, one day this student decided to confront me about me and my looks after school. Here and one of her friends show up at my door. As a policy, I don't speak to students alone, so I bring my neighbor into the room with me. "Why do you always look at me funny?" "I don't always look at you. You're a student in my class. I have 27 other kids that need my attention as much as you." "Well, you always give me a look like this." "Well, if I'm giving you a look, it's probably because you're not on task, and I'm trying to get you on task without calling out your name in front of every." Her friend starts laughing. She looks rejected. "Well, my mom said if she ever saw you, she would cuss you out." Student slams my door. Me and my neighbor have a little giggle over the girl's first heartbreak, and then write a report. Gotta love middle school. I've been teaching for a few years. I'm young and not hideous, so I get a lot of come-ons. Though to be honest, they're more harassment than come-ons, intended to embarrass rather than seduce. But one boy in my class keeps hanging around my room at break and lunch and asking for books and plays in French to read. I think he might have a crush. He told me my eye makeup was pretty today. Conversely, I had a teacher in school who tried to seduce me. He once told me in class I has a husky voice and would be well suited to working on a phone, the Devil's Tango line. What a guy. I'm not a teacher, but I had a year-long crush on my 11th grade band teacher. We chatted on ICQ and I sent her so many flirty pictures and messages. She was around 28 and lonely in a rural hell. I remember her once saying, "I only wish you were at least 22. Such a shame." She couldn't stay the entire school year because of the terrible pay, but I helped her move out of her place after she resigned. She made me chicken nuggets and we slow danced to Duran Duran on that last day I seen her. It was nice. Glad I got to say goodbye. This guy was smart, self-motivated, and tall and strong. He was independent enough to a point where I didn't even need to give him explicit verbal instructions. He would take roll for me and then immediately begin grading the quizzes, homework I'd left at his desk. At the end of the year, I asked him to sign my yearbook. He says that he'll take it with him because he'll take some time and that I'll get it back at the end of the day. I normally wouldn't just give my yearbook to anyone, but I trust this guy, so I hesitantly give it to him. When he gives it back to me after school, I flip through it, looking frantically for his message. What I read was a love letter telling me how I was the only young good-looking male teacher around, how his best friend, a girl, had a crush on me, and how he's going to especially miss my nerdy self. That's right, I'm a dude. I still get crap from my old coworkers about it. Probably one of the most awkward moments pertaining to this happened to me last year. I am 26 and I teach 10th grade. I've been at the school for a few years and have gotten to know the staff and most of the students fairly well. Unfortunately, a student couldn't turn down a dare and shouted down my hallway during 4th period class exchange, MS. Dictateth is as thick as frickk. Of course I, and all the other students and teachers in the hallway, heard this. After a moment of being shocked, I quickly pressured the students in the hallway to rat out their friend. They're sophomores and easily throw each other under the bus. He was a student in my 6th period. I immediately wrote the referral and sent it to my admin prior to 6th period. Adina am close to grilled the student while he was supposed to be in my class asking what thick meant. We all know what it means. He just wanted the kid to crack. I later heard the conversation went like this. So, thick. You this Ms. Dictatethas is fat. No, it means, ugh. It means hot. So, you're saying you want to have the devil's tango with Ms. Dictatethas. And then the student began to cry. He came back after suspension and was apologetic about the instance. His mother and I had quite a few phone calls prior to his return and we were all on the same page. He ended up passing the year with a good grade and a life lesson under his belt. And now the ongoing joke between the staff and I is that the thought of having the devil's tango with me is enough to bring someone to tears.